Our planet is an incredible tapestry of life, woven with millions of different species, each playing a unique role in its ecosystem. From the smallest insect to the largest whale, every animal contributes to the health and balance of our world. But sometimes the threads of this tapestry can break. When the very last individual of a species dies, we call it extinction. This is a permanent loss, a silence that can never be unbroken. It's like a book that has been burned. The story it contained is gone forever, and we can never read its pages again. Understanding why this happens is one of the most important things we can do to protect the amazing animals that are still with us today. Extinction can happen for many reasons. Sometimes it's a natural process, but in recent history, human actions have become the main cause. When we change habitats by cutting down forests or building cities, animals lose their homes and their food sources. The introduction of new species to an area can also be devastating, as they might compete with or prey on the native wildlife that has no defense against them. Overhunting has also pushed many incredible creatures to the brink and beyond. Losing an animal isn't just sad, it has real consequences for the environment, often causing a chain reaction that affects many other plants and animals in a delicate balance. In this journey, we are going to travel back in time to catch a final glimpse of 4 incredible animals that no longer walk, swim, or fly on our Earth. We will explore the rugged mountains of North Africa, the icy waters of the North Atlantic, the cold seas of the Bering Strait, and a remote island in the Indian Ocean. Each of these places was once home to a legendary creature whose story ended in a final, often lonely sighting. These are not just tales of loss. They are powerful reminders of the fragility of life and the profound responsibility we have as stewards of this planet. By learning about the Barbary Lion, the Great Auk, Steller's sea cow, and the Dodo, we can better understand the pressures that wildlife faces today. Their stories are filled with wonder and tragedy, showing us just how special each animal was, and how quickly a species can disappear if we are not careful. These last glimpses serve as a powerful warning. They teach us that every action has a consequence and that conservation is not just about saving animals, it's about preserving the richness and beauty of our world for all future generations. Let's dive in and meet these lost legends. Imagine a lion, but bigger and more majestic than any you see today. This was the Barbary lion, also known as the North African lion. This magnificent cat was the king of the mountains and deserts of the Maghreb region, a vast area stretching from Morocco all the way to Egypt. Unlike its cousins on the African savanna who live in open grasslands, the Barbary lion was a creature of the rugged Atlas Mountains. It prowled through dense forests and rocky terrain, a solitary hunter that adapted to a tougher, more isolated life. It was a symbol of power and royalty for centuries, even being the type of lion that Roman emperors used in the gladiatorial arenas of the Colosseum. What made the Barbary lion truly stand out was its incredible appearance. Hunters and naturalists who saw them described these lions as being enormous, possibly the largest lion subspecies that ever lived. But their most defining feature was a long, dark, and shaggy mane. This impressive mane extended from their head, down their neck, across their shoulders, and even along their belly. The color ranged from dark black to a deep brown, making them look even more imposing and formidable. This thick coat likely helped protect them from the colder temperatures in their mountain habitat, a stark contrast to the hot savannas where other lions roam. These lions were not the social cats we often think of today. While savanna lions live in large family groups called prides, Barbary lions were thought to be much more solitary. Because their prey, like Barbary stags and wild boar, was more scattered in the mountains, it made more sense for them to hunt alone or in very small groups. This solitary nature added to their mystique and made them even more elusive. They were the ghosts of the mountains, powerful predators that ruled their domain with an air of quiet confidence, a far cry from the roaring prides of the open plains. The world of the Barbary lion began to shrink dramatically with the spread of modern firearms. For centuries they had coexisted with humans, but now they were seen as a threat to livestock, and a prized trophy for hunters. Bounties were placed on them, encouraging widespread hunting. As their numbers dwindled, their territory was also fragmented by expanding human settlements and agriculture. By the late 1800s, this once mighty king was on the verge of disappearing forever. Sightings became incredibly rare, and the great roars that once echoed through the Atlas Mountains were falling silent, one by one. The decline of the Barbary lion was a slow and tragic process, a story of a magnificent animal being pushed into smaller and more remote pockets of its former range. By the turn of the 20th century, these lions were gone from most of North Africa, with only a few survivors clinging to existence in the rugged wilderness of Morocco and Algeria. The last photograph ever taken of a Barbary lion in the wild was in 1925, a fleeting image of an animal that was already a living ghost. Each report of a sighting became a major event, a sign that the king had not yet completely abdicated its throne. One of the most widely cited last sightings occurred in 1942. In the high Atlas Mountains of Morocco, a French colonial hunter shot and killed what was believed to be one of the last wild Barbary lions. This event was long considered the final nail in the coffin for the species in the wild. For years, the story of this hunt marked the official end of the Barbary lion's reign. It was a somber conclusion for such a powerful creature. Not a quiet fading away, but a final, violent end at the hands of a human. The mountains fell silent, and the world believed another magnificent species was lost forever. However, the story of the Barbary lion did not quite end there. More than a decade later in 1956, came a truly definitive and poignant final glimpse. Passengers traveling on a bus route north of the town of Sétif, in Algeria, were stunned by what they saw. There, standing by the side of the road, was a large solitary lion. It calmly watched the bus and its astonished passengers before turning and melting back into a nearby forested area. This was not a hunter's tale or a second-hand report. It was a direct observation by multiple witnesses, a final, peaceful farewell from the last of its kind. Tragically, this lion's refuge was not to last. Shortly after this incredible sighting, the forest where it had disappeared was completely destroyed during the intense fighting of the French-Algerian War. It is almost certain that this last known Barbary lion perished when its final sanctuary was wiped off the map. Today there is a glimmer of hope as between 80 and 100 lions in captivity are thought to be descendants of the Barbary lion. But without DNA from a wild specimen to compare, their purity can never be fully confirmed. The true Barbary lion, the wild king of the Atlas, lives on only in stories and a single haunting last glance from a bus window. Long before we knew about penguins in the southern hemisphere, the North Atlantic had its own version, the Great Auk. This large flightless bird was a member of the Alcid family, which includes puffins and murres, but it looked strikingly similar to a penguin with its black and white plumage, upright posture, and incredible swimming abilities. Standing nearly 3 feet tall, it was a formidable presence on the rocky, isolated islands it called home. Its habitat stretched across the cold waters of the North Atlantic, from the coasts of northern Europe and Scandinavia to Iceland, Greenland, and eastern Canada. The Great Auk was a master of the sea. Though clumsy and slow on land, it was a powerful and graceful swimmer, using its small wings to fly through the water in pursuit of fish. These birds were built for an aquatic life, spending most of their time in the ocean and only coming ashore to breed. They formed massive, noisy colonies on remote islands that were safe from land predators like polar bears and wolves. This need for predator-free, accessible nesting sites was also one of their greatest vulnerabilities, as it concentrated their entire population in just a few specific locations. One of the most remarkable things about the Great Auk was its complete lack of fear towards humans. Having evolved on islands with no land predators, they simply did not see people as a threat. Sailors and explorers who encountered them described how you could walk right up to the birds. This trust, so endearing and rare in the wild, would sadly become their downfall. They were social birds, mating for life and laying only a single large egg each year. Both parents would take turns incubating the egg, showing a deep bond and commitment to raising their single chick. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples of the North Atlantic hunted the Great Auk sustainably for its meat, eggs, and feathers. However, everything changed when European sailors arrived. Beginning in the 18th century, the Great Auk became a target for massive commercial exploitation. Its down feathers were highly valued for making pillows and mattresses, its meat was a convenient source of food for sailors on long voyages, and its oil was used for fuel. The birds were hunted on an industrial scale, with entire colonies being wiped out in a single season. Their flightlessness and trusting nature made them tragically easy to catch. As the 18th century gave way to the 19th, the once teeming colonies of the Great Auk had been reduced to near silence. The bird that once numbered in the millions was now exceptionally rare. This rarity, however, did not lead to protection. Instead, it created a new and morbid demand. Museums and wealthy private collectors across Europe became desperate to obtain specimens of the disappearing bird. They were willing to pay huge sums of money for a preserved skin or an egg, which ironically funded expeditions specifically to hunt down and kill the last remaining individuals for display cases. The Great Auk was being hunted into extinction for the sake of preserving its memory. The last major breeding colony was located on an island off the coast of Iceland called Geirfuglasker. This rocky outpost had been a safe haven for the auks, but in 1830, a volcanic eruption caused the island to sink beneath the waves. The few surviving birds were forced to move to a nearby island called Elde. This new home was much more accessible to humans, and the fate of the remaining population was sealed. Hunters quickly descended on Elde, and by the early 1840s, only a single breeding pair was known to be left in the entire world. The officially recognized last of the species met their end on July 3, 1844. 3 Icelandic fishermen landed on Elde with the specific goal of capturing the last 2 birds for a collector. They found the pair nesting, and the 2 men John Branson and Sigurdur Isleifsson chased and killed them. A third man, Ketil Ketilsson, tragically crushed their single final egg with his boot. In that moment, the Great Auk as a breeding species was gone forever. The hunters had no idea they had just extinguished a species. To them, it was just another job. But the story has one last haunting chapter. 8 years later, in the winter of 1852, a respected ornithologist named Henry Drummond was on a ship off the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. As he scanned the shoreline, he spotted something unbelievable: a lone Great Auk. He watched the solitary bird as it wandered along the coast, a lonely survivor in a vast empty ocean. It was the last of its kind, thousands of miles from its ancestral home in Iceland. As the ship moved on, the bird disappeared from view, vanishing into the mists of history. This was the final confirmed glimpse of a Great Auk, a silent and solitary end for a once thriving species. Section 6. The Gentle Giant of the Bering Sea, Steller's sea cow. In the year 1741, a shipwrecked German naturalist named Georg Wilhelm Steller found himself stranded on the uninhabited Commander Islands in the frigid Bering Sea. It was there that he made one of the most incredible zoological discoveries of all time, a massive, gentle marine mammal that had never been documented by science. This creature, which would later be named Steller's sea cow, was the largest member of the Sirenian order, the group that includes modern-day manatees and dugongs. It was a true giant, reaching lengths of up to 30 feet and weighing an estimated 10 tons. Steller's sea cow was a slow-moving social animal that lived in small family groups. Its entire life revolved around feeding on the abundant kelp forests in the shallow coastal waters. It had a thick, dark, bark-like skin that protected it from the sharp rocks and cold water. Unlike its modern relatives, it was completely toothless, using 2 large keratinous plates in its mouth to mash and grind the kelp. It was so buoyant that it couldn't fully submerge itself, meaning its back was always exposed above the water's surface, as it grazed peacefully, much like a cow in a pasture. Steller's detailed observations provide the only first-hand account we have of these magnificent creatures. He described them as being incredibly docile and seemingly unafraid of his crew. They were also highly social and displayed strong family bonds. Steller wrote that when one sea cow was harpooned, others in the group would attempt to help it. They would try to overturn the boat, press against the wounded individual to dislodge the harpoon, and even try to shield it with their own bodies. This loyalty and compassion, while remarkable, made them incredibly vulnerable to hunters. At the time of its discovery by Europeans, the Steller's sea cow was already in a precarious position. Its population was estimated to be only around 2,000 individuals, confined to the waters around the Commander Islands. It was a relic species, the last survivor of a group that was once more widespread. For the shipwrecked crew, the sea cows were a source of survival. Their meat was said to be delicious, and a single animal could feed the crew for weeks. When the survivors were finally rescued, they carried news of this easy-to-hunt, massive source of food back to the mainland, sealing the gentle giant's fate. Section 7. A fleeting glimpse of a lost world. The news of a large, slow, and easily catchable source of meat spread like wildfire among fur traders and seal hunters operating in the North Pacific. These sailors, often on long voyages and in need of fresh provisions, began making regular stops at the Commander Islands. The sea cows, unable to dive and showing no fear of boats, were incredibly easy targets. Hunters could simply wade into the shallow water and harpoon them. The animals' strong social bonds became a fatal flaw. As they gathered around a wounded companion, they made themselves easy targets for the hunters, who could then kill several members of the group at once. The slaughter was relentless and unsustainable. The sea cow population, already small and with a slow reproductive rate, could not withstand this intense hunting pressure. In just 27 years after Georg Steller first described them, the species was hunted to extinction. In 1768, a hunter named Ivan Popov reportedly killed the last one. The official last sighting was of a lone individual spotted by a hunter's boat. Before they could pursue it, the boat turned and the last sea cow vanished into the cold waters, never to be seen again. The world had lost one of its most unique marine mammals in the blink of an eye. For nearly 2 centuries, the story of the Steller sea cow was considered closed, a textbook example of rapid, human-caused extinction. The scientific community accepted that the animal was gone forever. Its memory lived on only in Steller's journals, and in the skeletons that were assembled in museums around the world. The idea that any could have survived seemed impossible, given the intense hunting and their limited range. The Bering Sea had lost its gentle giant, and the kelp forests grew silent without their most important grazer. Then, in 1963, came a startling and unconfirmed report. The crew of a Soviet whaling ship, sailing in the waters off Kamchatka, not far from the Commander Islands, reported a bizarre sighting in the official journal of the USSR Academy of Sciences. They claimed to have seen a group of 6 large, unknown marine mammals grazing on seaweed in a shallow bay. The animals were described as being 6 to 8 meters long, with split upper lips and trunk-like snouts, a description that perfectly matched Steller's sea cow. The only inconsistency was that the crew reported the animals could submerge, which contradicts historical accounts. While never verified, this credible glimpse offers a tantalizing and mysterious postscript to the sea cow's tragic story. Section 8, the icon of extinction, the dodo. On the remote tropical island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean, there once lived a bird so unique it has become the very symbol of extinction, the dodo. This flightless bird was a distant relative of pigeons and doves, but it looked nothing like them. It was large and stout, weighing around 50 pounds, with grayish-blue feathers, a large head, a long hooked beak, and tiny, useless wings. The dodo had evolved in a paradise with no natural predators. As a result, it had no reason to fly and, more importantly, no fear of other creatures, including the humans who would one day arrive on its shores. The dodo's world was the dense woodlands of Mauritius, where it foraged on the forest floor for fallen fruits, nuts, and seeds. Its large, strong beak was perfectly adapted for cracking open hard-shelled foods. Because it had no enemies, the dodo was described by the first sailors who encountered it as being remarkably fearless. It would waddle right up to people out of curiosity, a trait that was misinterpreted as foolishness, likely leading to its name. The first documented account of the dodo comes from Dutch sailors who landed on Mauritius in 1598, marking the beginning of the end for this incredible bird. The arrival of humans brought a swift and catastrophic decline for the dodo population. Sailors, hungry after months at sea, found the large, slow-moving birds incredibly easy to catch and a convenient source of fresh meat. Although their meat was reportedly not very tasty, they were hunted in large numbers. But direct hunting was only part of the problem. The sailors also brought with them a host of invasive species that the dodo had never encountered before. Dogs, pigs, cats, and rats spread across the island, preying on the dodo's eggs and chicks, which were laid in simple nests on the ground. The combination of hunting, habitat destruction as forests were cleared for settlements, and predation by these new animals was more than the dodo could handle. Its population plummeted at an alarming rate. The last widely accepted confirmed sighting of a dodo occurred in 1662. A group of stranded Dutch sailors on the island wrote about their encounter. They noted that the birds were so unafraid they would follow them. When the sailors caught one, its distress calls attracted other dodos, who rushed in to help, only to be captured and killed themselves. This poignant account highlights the bird's trusting nature, which ultimately led to its demise in less than a century after its discovery. Section 9. Echoes of the Lost, a Lesson for Today. The stories of the Barbary Lion, the Great Auk, Steller's sea cow, and the Dodo are more than just sad tales from history. They are powerful lessons, echoes from a lost world that carry a crucial message for us today. Each of these magnificent animals disappeared for reasons that are alarmingly familiar: overhunting, habitat destruction, and the introduction of invasive species. These are the very same threats that countless animals around the globe continue to face. The final lonely sightings of these creatures serve as a stark reminder of how quickly and completely a species can be wiped from existence when we fail to recognize its value until it is too late. From the fearless dodo on its island paradise to the gentle Steller's sea cow in its kelp forests, we see how unique adaptations can become fatal vulnerabilities when conditions change. The Great Auk's lack of fear and the Barbary Lion's prized mane made them easy targets. These were not weaknesses in the animals themselves, but rather traits that humans exploited. Their extinction shows us that we have a profound impact on the natural world, and with that power comes an immense responsibility. We learn that conservation is not just about saving a single species but about protecting the delicate balance of entire ecosystems. The loss of these animals leaves a permanent hole in the planet's biodiversity. We will never again hear the roar of a Barbary lion in the Atlas Mountains or see a Great Auk dive into the cold Atlantic. We can only imagine the sight of a herd of Steller's sea cows grazing peacefully in the Bering Sea. These extinctions diminish our world, making it a less wild and wondrous place. They are a reminder that the wildlife we cherish today is not guaranteed to be here tomorrow. The jaguar, the polar bear, the rhino, these modern icons of the wild are walking the same fragile path that the dodo and the Great Auk once did. Ultimately, the last glimpses of these extinct legends should inspire us to act. They teach us that we must be vigilant and proactive in our conservation efforts. By protecting habitats, combating poaching, and making conscious choices in our daily lives, we can help ensure that no more animals end up as a final haunting sighting. The fate of the world's wildlife is in our hands. Let's learn from the silence left behind by these lost species and work together to keep the wild alive and roaring, swimming and thriving for generations to come. The future of our planet's incredible biodiversity depends on it.